the Oklahoma State University Library with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. Today is September 12th, 2012, and we're in Kingfisher, Oklahoma, Kingfisher County, interviewing Bill and Jacquelyn Pope. Today we're going to talk about the Crist Centennial Farm as well as the Pope Centennial Farm, and we're going to start with the Crist Farm and find out how your family, Jacquelyn, came to settle in Oklahoma.
Fine, but we're at Loyal.
We're in Loyal. Are we in Kingfisher County?
Kingfisher County.
Okay, good. In Loyal, Oklahoma. Good. All right, Jacquelyn, you're up.
Okay. My great-grandfather, Alvin Crist, came in the run of 92. And it's kind of a funny story. My mother and her brother went back to Kansas, and they found, I don't know whether he was a cousin, or I think he was a cousin of theirs, but he said that they didn't ever know what happened to Nancy and Al for sure, but he was quite a gambler, and he got his land in a horse race, but it was the run. So we've always laughed kind of at that a little bit, that he got his in a horse race. So that's how the Crists came here. And they really never lived on the farm. They built in the town of Loyal, which my grandmother said my great-grandmother was kind of aristocratic, or, she come from a better family. And so they lived in the town. They had a 2-story home, which was a big home and a fancy home for the day and age. And I don't know. I kind of think grandfather was also a newspaper man. And the town was Kiel at that time. It was named for Kiel, Germany. It's quite a German settlement here. And so that was how they came.
What motivated them to make the run?
Well, Grandpa was an adventurer. I mean, that's it. See, her family, Grandma's family, just really didn't approve of him, from what I hear. And so they came just as an adventure. And he thought he could better himself. That's the way that they were. And like I said, my grandfather, I was telling you a little bit ago,
Great-grandfather?
No, my grandfather traded mail routes and went to Minnesota because he thought he could better himself, by going there. But they came back.
Okay. All right, Bill, tell me a little bit about the Pope Farm and how your family came to Oklahoma.
Well, I don't know exactly why they came to Oklahoma, except that they were looking for land. They came out of Kansas, and they didn't make the run of 1892 in here, but they did come in a few months later and purchased 3/4. I think it was 3/4.
Your great-grandfather and your grandfather.
Yes, my great-grandfather and my grandfather and his brother. And they settled the quarters, and they lived there until their deaths. My great-grandfather's name was Henry. He lived to be almost 100 years old. And I never did know him, but he and his wife lived on one of the quarters, and my grandfather lived on the quarter, and then my uncle, or his brother, lived on another quarter. So they had 3/4 that they secured after the run, but just shortly after the run of 92. That's about all I can tell you about them, because they wanted to be they were farmers, and
German
I guess
farmers.
they were some adventurers too, but they helped establish the first school in their area, which every settlement that came in, they had tried, the first thing was a new school. And
What was the school called?
Wellesley, they built a school. It's 4 miles west of Loyal, and my grandfather, I think, served on the first school board there.
Probably.
But it was grades kindergarten to 8th, and it was 2 miles from their house, or 1.5 miles, and they walked to school every day. There was I don't know how many of the kids. There was probably 4 or 5 of them at that time.
Kind of an interesting story, too. His mother taught in the school, and that's how his dad and his mother became acquainted, was through the school. His mother loved to tell the stories about the early days, like when the house burnt. They built a house there, and it burnt. And his mother said, she was wanting to know, she said there was just one thing that she would love to have had out of that house, was the old cake plate that had a stand on. She said because Mrs. Pope would fix an angel food cake every Sunday, and they would all gather around the table on Sunday, and she said there was always that angel food cake of hers on that cake plate. She said she would love to have had that cake plate. One day she was kicking around in the embers and she found it. Not a crack, not a chip, and I have it today.
Wow. Well, on the Crist farm, the family lived in town.
Uh-huh.
So what was happening on the farm in those early days?
I don't know too much about the Crist farm
Mm-hmm.
because it did not come to my grandfather's side. It went to his sister's family.
Okay.
And her son had, they said, TB of the bone. He lost a leg. And so they wanted a place for Chubby to be able to have a home, And so the farm went to that side of the family and to him. Then when he passed away, Bill and I purchased it. That's how we got the farm. And I said, I really wanted it because it was from my side of the family, and we happened to have the money, and we purchased it.
It's like coming home.
Yeah.
Well, the early years of the Pope farm, what were some of the crops that they were growing on the land?
Well, they had a lot of horses, of course. They had to farm with horses. There was no machinery, mechanical tractors or anything. So my grandpa and his two oldest boys, well, there were 3 of them, I guess 3 oldest boys, did the farming on the place. They farmed his place, and then they farmed my grandpa's Henry's place, which was across the road south. It was one of the 3 that they had settled. And they farmed Kaffir corn, and they raised wheat and oats. Oats was a big crop because of the horses. And a lot of their feed had to go to the horses, so their number of cattle that they had was rather limited. Mm-hmm. But they did have cattle on wheat pastures, so they had meat, plenty of meat in the early days. One story I can tell you is my dad and his younger brother, just younger than he, had 2 sulky plows. They were horse plows. And they were plowing one day and out there on their homestead. And of course, they didn't have shoes on. They just, their feet dangled under the sulky. And my uncle got his foot in a rolling coulter. Well, it's a disc. And it just cut his foot, just terribly cut it. So they had 8 horses, and Dad took the boy, his younger brother, took him and put his foot in the furrow, and he took and
he said he stomped the dirt down on it.
Then he had to take the horses and unhook them and take them to the house. Then he came back after he'd done that with those 2 plows, came back and got his brother. They took him to the hospital, to the doctor in Loyal. And
I don't know if they even took him to the doctor or not.
I think they did. But anyhow, his foot did heal, and he was all right.
He wasn't lame or anything.
Quick thinking too.
Was quite.
I had heard that story.
Bill's dad used to tell the story about doing that.
The first one of the children that got to go to college went to Oklahoma A&M, and he and a friend of his, they were both pretty prominent young men. When they got over there, they were working on Old Central, and they put in windows. So they took one of the windowsills that was laying on the ground, and they brought it home with them. And they got scared because they brought it home, and they hid that down here in Loyal. And to this day, I don't think they've ever found it again. But those are 2 of the stories that I heard about the early days in their farming. They did haul their wheat in wagons. They thrashed. They had the thrashing machines in the community that came around and thrashed each person's place. Everybody helped everybody else. Well, they hauled their wheat then to Hitchcock. Hitchcock's about, 13 to 14 miles
Something like that.
west of here. And that's where their grain went.
There was a railroad come through Hitchcock, and so.
Then when the first Model Ts came out, my grandpa purchased a Model T, he and his brother. And they didn't know how to drive it. Well, my dad had been to mechanic school. He was about 17 or 18. And he went through the 8th grade out here at the welding school, the one that they established. Well, he got in the one Model T, and his cousin got in the other, and they drove those from Hitchcock back here to Loyal. And of course, young guys, they picked up on it pretty good. But they said that there was ruts, and roads were just terribly rutty, and it was a rough trip. They brought them home.
Well, what about some early structures on the farm? Was there?
There was this, on the Pope farm, there was this house. Then they later on built a better house and moved this house just a little ways and made a shed out of it.
It was used as a barn.
And they had a little shop. And as far as I know, they had a
Chicken
a
house.
barn for the horses and a chicken house. That's about all the buildings that I can remember. I do remember those buildings on the place. Mm-hmm. And I remember the house, of course. It was burned in a fire. But after that, the buildings were torn down or just basically
Fell down.
done away with. And we built a round top on the farm. And my dad built a shed over there, a metal shed. Well, the round top today, it was hit by a storm and it just tore it all to pieces. That was not too long ago. But the round top had
You mean the shed?
the barn.
Okay.
And the shed, it was broken into, and Dad had tools and things in there, and he lost all of them. And it just took all the wind out of him, and to think that somebody would steal his tools. Mm-hmm. And he never did get over it. But
he went into
those
depression.
buildings, basically all of them have been removed today. Mm-hmm. We're cleaning it up, trying to get it restored to farming. And that's kind of the way it started. Today we raise wheat on the place mainly, and cattle. And we have two farms just to the north of it that we integrate that are more or less included with this farm, and we run cattle on them.
So you still stay pretty busy.
Oh, yeah. We have a set of four-wheelers apiece, and we run cattle.
Well, we're going to jump back to the Crist farm. Now, the Crist farm has a little bit of history tied in with the town of Kiel and Loyal. Mm-hmm. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, what I understand was Grandpa gave the acreages for town, and then they sold the lots to people, Now, what that all went for, how it was done exactly, I don't know. But my understanding was also that the plots for the church were given. He gave those. But honestly, to know exactly how, I don't know how it did go, but they always lived in town. They were right on Main Street, and, they had lumber brought in here from Dover, from what I understand, is how they got their lumber in here for the house. And you saw the round window in the front of the picture there. I was always told that the glass for that came from Germany. So that it was supposed to be quite a house at the time it was built. And this area, homes were not big. They were just, there was dugouts there, and just anything they could throw together, and which wasn't much because we were quite a ways either from Dover or Hitchcock where the railroads came in to even get any lumber or anything here. So the house was, and the first thing that would go up would be a barn, not a house, as a general rule. And they weren't fancy, and there was no, water was carried. You didn't have any plumbing or anything. Like, I go back over by Guthrie and one thing and another and see those houses, and they say they were built with plumbing and all, and I think, oh my gosh, how long we lived without any in this part of the state. I just, it was a different world over here than what it was even in the eastern part of the state.
At one point, did Kiel become loyal?
It was during First World War. They changed the name to Loyal to prove their loyalty to the United States, because they no longer wanted to be called Kiel, like Kiel, Germany, when we were at war with Germany. So that's the reason why they changed the name to Kiel, or to Loyal from Kiel.
Okay. And so the Crist family, what businesses would they get involved with? What was their occupations?
Well, they were mail carriers and newspaper people, as really, not really farmers. They couldn't make it at farming, so they would branch out. And like I said earlier, my grandfather found out there was a mail route. He was mail carrier around here. He found out there was a mail route in Minnesota, and he thought he could do better by going there. He had a little girl was the oldest, and he had 3 boys, and so they took out and went up to Minnesota. My mother was born there in 1917, and then her baby sister was born there 2 years later. There were 6 of them. They were born about 2 years apart, and mother was, I think, 6 years old when they came back to Oklahoma. It wasn't any better, and they hated the winters. So they came back, and my grandfather was a mail carrier when he retired. He was carrying mail out of Enid at that time. So, but my mother and Dad and Bill's folks, they all grew up here in this community. And Bill and I grew up here, and our kids have grown up here and are still here. So,
where did your mother go to school when she was younger?
Here in Loyal. She went to Loyal.
Okay.
The schools had all consolidated by the time she came back, or most of them had. So she went to school in Loyal. They settled out east of town in I believe it was Grandpa's uncle's farm. He was not able to take care of himself, and so he took them in to take care of him, and that's where they lived.
And did your mother have an occupation outside of the home?
No, not really. Not my mother. She did work when she was real young on thrashing crews. She was a cook on thrashing, 50 cents a day. But, or was it a week? Maybe 50 cents a week. But she'd get up, she said, and make bread and bake pies and everything before the day started,
That's a chore in itself.
In just a wagon, cooking for thrashing crews.
And your father was
He was a farmer.
Okay.
And but the thing about my dad is he had a bad fever. When I was 10 years old, lost his sight and one thing and another. So, he didn't do much after that. So.
Okay. And how many siblings do you have?
I have 2 sisters.
Okay. So did you grow up in the city or on the farm?
On the farm.
Okay.
Yeah. We, my great-grandmother Maxwell, which was my dad's grandmother, let us live up north of town here, 2 miles north. It was my dad's uncle Johnny's farm, and he died with an appendicitis, and he didn't have any family. And so the farm went to my great-grandmother. And so she let us live there, and we farmed there. Mother and I ran the tractor, and it was no automatic turning like there is now. And I'd ride up on the fender till we'd come to the corner, and then both of us would have to try to turn that old case tractor around the corner. And that's how I grew up.
Okay.
In the fields.
Okay, Bill, going back to your family, growing up on the farm, did you grow up on the farm? Let me clarify first.
I grew up until I was 6 years old.
Okay.
Then we moved. My mother became the postmaster in Loyal in 1939. So we moved to Loyal, and we were there till I was a sophomore, junior in high school. And then we moved back to the farm, just a mile and a half north of here. And I lived there until I was ready. I graduated from high school, and then I left the farm and went to Oklahoma State, got my degree, and served in the Army. And then I taught vocational agriculture for 10 years. And I farmed a little bit on the side. And then we came back to the farm after that 10 years. And we've lived either within a mile here ever since.
So you have this really tie, especially with the postal service in your family.
Yeah.
On both
Yeah, quite a
sides.
little bit.
Well, growing up, when you're a little boy and you're still on the farm, did you have chores you had to do?
Oh yeah, yeah. When I was little, we had about 6 cows that we'd milk every morning and night, and I'd help with the milking. And then after we moved to town, we had a cow that we brought to town, and I'd go over to the pasture and milk her overnight and morning, before school and after school, and we'd have milk for our own use and still what we had left around town.
Now, were your grandparents still back on the farm when you moved to town?
When
Your grandpa was, wasn't he?
Yes, my grandfather lived on the farm until his later years, and then he moved in, and the children, each one of them took him for so many months. But he was a farmer all his life.
Okay.
That's all he did.
He
was a member of the Anti-Horse Association here in Loyal. They had some bandits that lived out in the hills. Gyp Hills are just west of here. And so they went out to get him. This posse did. And when they got out there, he held the horses. And these robbers came back around while the other deputies were going in, and they said, "Frank, we know you. We're not going to shoot you, or we're not going to kill you." But they shot him in the leg, and they took off with the horses.
scattered the horses so that they.
But there also, I was reading about their association. They had horse thieves east of Loyal, and the Anti-Horse Association went out there and took people and run them off. Told them they'd leave the community, and they burned all their buildings. So they got them out. That's the way they got them out of the community. They didn't try them or anything. They just went out there, told them to get out of there, and they moved the buildings. Of course, they pretty well knew who it was.
I can't imagine living in times.
One of the stories that I have about my grandparents, my mother, her maiden name was Gill.
Your grandmother's.
My grandmother's name was Gill, and of course my grandfather's name was Pope. Well, they had a sister, and who was it? There was.
Popes married Gills, and Gills married Popes, and they all married on the same day.
Yeah, they had a wedding on the same day. Well, one of these Popes, or one of these Gills that married my grandmother, or not my grandmother, but my grand aunt, they moved down to
Yukon?
No, they were Piedmont.
Okay.
And at Piedmont, they had a boy by the name of Easton. And Easton had a boy by the name of Stanley. And Stanley had a boy by the name of Vince. So does that
Vince Gill.
And they lived in the Piedmont area. I knew my grandmother real well, and of course I didn't know Vince, but I knew his dad and his grandfather. But they all stayed here except for for that family. The other two that married stayed in the community.
The families to this day get together on Thanksgiving every year. Any of them that can come. I can't, 100 and some years they've had their celebration. I can't remember what year it was. They had their 100th year, but they still have that get family reunion on Thanksgiving Day. All of them that can come. So.
Going back to the farmhouse, how was it heated?
How was it?
Heated.
Heated.
It was heated. The original house, this one that's pictured here, I don't know. I suppose they were all heated with a potbelly stove, wood stove. Mm-hmm. And they had only one stove in the second house. I can remember it.
Well, they probably had a wood cook stove, though, that kept the back.
Yeah, they had a wood cook stove in the kitchen. But that was the way they heated, was with a potbelly stove. And I can remember we'd come in and gather around that stove, and it would be red hot. But it would be cold over the corner, too. And everyone's...
One side of you would cook and the other side would freeze.
When you were still living on the farm as a little boy, where was your bedroom?
In the house that I was in.
Mm-hmm.
It was in the south end of the house. It was kind of an L-shaped house. And I slept against the wall in the south bedroom. And my parents had a bedroom just adjoining it, and then the kitchen. It was a 2-bedroom house with a kitchen. And we didn't own it, we just rented it and lived there. And I lived there till I was almost 6. I started school in 39. So it was, we lived there a little while, and then that same year we moved to Loyal. And that year my mother became the postmaster at Loyal.
Would you go back and visit the farm as you were growing up through the years?
Well, I was on it almost every day, even then, because I would go with my dad. And we had chores and cattle to check, and it was... you went out there till it rained. If it rained, you couldn't get there.
Mm-hmm.
But...
so you hoped for rainy days.
Yeah, we did have some rain then.
You said you hoped for rainy days as a kid so you didn't have to go to the farm. So you could play with all the town kids.
I kind of enjoyed it.
When did the farm get electricity?
About 39. My dad put the electricity in. He wasn't an electrician, but he hung a bulb. We had a bulb in 2 rooms. And that was the first electricity. Of course, electricity didn't come in, the rural electricity didn't come in until about 1938 or 9 in this area, north of here. We lived 7.5 miles north of Loyal at that time. And OG&E still, they had serviced Loyal with REA.
Before we got any real electric.
Serviced us in the rural areas. Yeah, it was something to have electricity. Because you could have an electric iron, and you could, that's about all we had. Radio, we could listen. We had battery radios up until that time, but we could listen to...
You'd be listening to something when the battery would go dead. Daddy'd run the car upside the house and jumper cables in so you could finish your story that you was listening to.
Any favorite shows on the radio back then?
Well, I always liked Jack Benny and Lone Ranger.
The Green Hornet.
No, I don't remember.
You don't remember the Green Hornet.
But Gene Autry and we used to, one thing, Joe Louis was big then, you know. He was a champion, heavyweight champion of the world. And on Saturday, every Saturday, you'd go to town to buy groceries Saturday night. And in the grocery store, back in the back, they had a big iron, or a potbelly stove. And they had they had electric radio then because they had electricity in Loyal. But we listened to Joe Louis fight and he'd fight, maybe once a month almost, seemed like. And I remember listening to heavyweight fights on that radio.
Can you kind of describe the town of Loyal for me? Of course, today I'm sure it's a lot different than when y'all were growing up.
See, I didn't grow up in Loyal.
Hmm.
My family, Dad was just a sharecropper. We lived at Hennessy for a while. We lived up on the river up here, north of town for a while, and then he moved to Hennessy, farmed over there till I started school, and then we moved down by Kingfisher. And I went to Kingfisher school for 7 years, and before I came back to Loyal. Then when Daddy became incapacitated, and Mother and I took over the farming, and my great-grandmother, I said, let us farm her place. Well, we moved back to Loyal at that time, and I was a 7th grader.
Okay.
And in school. And that town, he can tell you more about the town than I can, because I don't remember the early day town. And he kind of does. Of course, he's older than I am anyhow, but.
The first schoolhouse was as you come into the stoplight. The first schoolhouse was, I don't know which side of the creek it was on, but it was right south of that stop sign. And it was a big school. It was pretty good size for those times. And the way I understand it, it was on the south side of the creek because they had to come across the creek to get water. There was 2 or 3 livery stables in town. There was 2 blacksmith shops. I don't remember both blacksmith shops, but I do remember one.
Hotel, they said.
There was a hotel in town. There was 2 cream stations that bought cream and eggs and sold feed. There was a dry goods store that had closed, but the building was still there. There was a hardware. There was 3 gas stations, 3 gas stations in town.
Drugstore.
And we had a telephone
Office.
We had 2 grocery stores. We had a post office and a drugstore. We had 2 cafes. We had a barber shop, and then we had our school. And those were only about the only businesses that I can remember in town. But I do remember those businesses. They used to, in April, they would celebrate the run of 92. And they would have a big celebration here. And there would be probably 1,000, maybe 1,500 people that would gather in town. They'd have a carnival. And this place had a racetrack on it. And they'd race out there, and they had a ball diamond on it too. They'd have ball games, pretty intense ball games. And there was a tree right at the east end of this place, on the fence line at the half-mile line. And the Indians they'd give them a beef, and those
Tribes would come in and.
Cheyennes, Arapaho would go out there, and they would kill that beef and hang it in that tree. And then they'd have dances in town then. But when I've got this place in the one east of it. And when I wanted to take that fence out between the 2 places. Well, they got the fence out, but the tree was there. And I had to farm around that tree so long, I decided I wanted it out of there. We took a bulldozer in there to get that tree out. And that bulldozer guy said that was the hardest tree he had ever pulled out.
And the boys are so upset with Dad that he ever thought about moving that tree out of there anyhow, because.
That was kind of a landmark in the area. But I didn't want it there, so I took it out.
Was there a bank in town?
Yes, I'm sorry. The bank is where the post office is now.
Just one?
Yes, there was one bank. It was a Farmers and Merchants Bank. And in the Depression, it went out. It went broke.
But it was robbed one time too, in the early days. And north of here, there, I don't know if it's still there or not, but there used to be a place up here where my some other great grandparents lived, and there was a dugout in one of them, and that's where Black and Jaeger used to go back up in there and hide, and they'd come down through some of the land that they owned and go. They knew they were there, but they never told on them. My grandfather, that was a newspaper man, was writing some stories about him one time, and so they had set up to waylay him, and my grandfather found out about it, and he changed hats and coats with him and come out, and so when they found out it was him, they let him go on, but they were laying in wait for my grandfather that was a great-grandfather that was the newspaper man.
Black and Jaeger still was a bunch that the added horse thieves were after out there in the hills when my grandpa got shot.
Yes.
But they knew him. That was the reason that they didn't kill him.
Do you know what newspapers your grandfather worked with?
It was the Kiel, what'd they say, the Kiel Republic, wasn't it? I can't remember. I've always been going to go hunt up some of I think O'Keene has, in the library up there, has some, and I need to go up there. I never have done it yet. Bill and I talked about doing it, and we just been so busy with other things to do. It's just like when we hunted up the Centennial Farm things. We had to go to Oklahoma City and go through the records down there to find for sure. We thought we knew what we had the Centennial Farms, but we had to go down there to find now his farm he knew, but the Crist farm, to find the real lineage for sure that it had stayed in the family, and it had. So we were real tickled about that.
Well, Bill, growing up, I mean, even though you were living in the city and you'd spend a lot of time working on the farm, did you think you wanted to become a farmer?
Well, I would like to be a farmer, but when I went to school, I started school over at Oklahoma State I wanted to be a coach and a history teacher. Well, that didn't work out. I decided that wasn't right. So I went ahead and got my degree in vocational agriculture. Well, I went to teach agriculture, and I decided that wasn't what I wanted to do. So I always was close to the farm, and so we came back to the farm when we had a chance to rent some land down here. We were in Kansas, and I came back and rented a quarter of land northwest here, and I taught school at Omega. That was before the two schools went together. I taught first year coached, and then for 6 more years I taught vocational agriculture, and then
started a dairy.
Then we started a dairy.
We had a grade A dairy,
and we run that dairy till about what?
1966 when we started dairying, and we raised our kids on the farm working on the dairy until, well, our son came back in 80. He got his degree in animal science from OSU, and he and his wife came back to the dairy. She grew up on a dairy farm down by Nykolaiszyn, and they wanted to dairy, and they've dairied until this spring, and the expenses got to where it didn't meet the price, and they had a purebred. We had built purebred. Our oldest son started his when he was 9 years old, and so we went ahead and built it all purebred, and they had Holsteins and Brown Swiss and Jerseys. In fact, the first purebred I think was probably the little Brown Swiss that Steve wrote a essay in the county. One of the dairy farmers here in the county was given to give a Brown Swiss heifer calf, and he won that and started him on his way. And then he bought some registered Holsteins and finally built it up till we had a milking herd dispersal. When Bill and I went out, golly, when was that? We decided we were going to get out. I don't know, I went in one day, we were feeding so many calves and one thing, and I said, something's going to give. It's either the cows or me. But they didn't ever turn off the milkers. Steve and Sandy went right ahead and started milking again, and we was feeding calves up until not too very long ago. And then this spring they decided to go ahead and get out, and they're still in the process of getting rid of heifers, but they've got rid of their milking herd. And
What did you coach?
I coached
Basketball.
basketball, baseball.
Mhm.
That's all they had here at the time.
But he taught grade school boys and girls and junior high boys and girls and high school boys and girls and taught science.
So I'm going to back up. How did you two meet?
Well, our first date was a blind date. His cousin and I were classmates. And she called me one day and she wanted to know if I'd go on a blind date. Well, I knew it had to be either he or his cousin or Jay. So I said, yeah, I'd go. And it turned out to be Bill.
I had known her a long time.
Yeah, we went to church together, but he was off at college, and so he'd been gone to college for about 4 years.
What year did you graduate from Oklahoma A&M?
The last class, 1956.
Before they changed the name?
I got I didn't get my degree because I didn't graduate.
He finished in midterm.
I had to go into the service before graduation, so when I came back to get my degree, it was Oklahoma State. So I got Oklahoma State on my diploma.
Both of our boys have finished it at Oklahoma State. We have a grandson that's got his degree in horticulture from Oklahoma State. We have 2 grandkids in Oklahoma State right now. So we bleed orange around here.
So when did you get married then, if you were?
56. He finished in December. We were married in February. I had graduated from high school the spring before, and he was going into the service, and darned if I hated to see him go clear to Georgia without me. Now I think how silly that was. He would have waited.
That was the deal. We had a blizzard. We were going to get married on Saturday. And we had a blizzard. And the lady that was supposed to marry us
we had a woman
was
preacher.
in Texas.
And she had married and went to Texas to be with her husband and would come on weekends by train to fill the pulpit. And she was going to marry us, and we had a
So
blizzard.
she couldn't do it. Well, the only other preacher that was available was a Baptist preacher here in the community, and he hadn't been ordained.
No, he'd been ordained, but hadn't.
He hadn't had his papers filed yet.
Yeah, he hadn't filed his papers
So
at the courthouse.
the courthouse was closed on
Saturday morning.
But that blizzard, this preacher agreed to go with me. We went down to the courthouse that morning.
They came and opened it up.
And they got him out. They certified his papers. And then we came back, and we were a little bit late, but we got here for the marriage.
We were supposed to be married at 2:00 in the afternoon. Well, Bill was a little late, but the preacher was later, so it worked.
I'm trying to do the math, so it's 56 years?
I think it was 57, wasn't it? 56 or 56, I guess.
Yeah, that's about right.
Well, as you look back on the farm, has what you've done, what you've raised, or your livestock changed through the years?
Oh, yes. The way that we farm so much more land anymore. So we have to have larger machinery. We started out with a John Deere. You probably heard of the D John Deere. Well, that's what I started with. My dad and he sold his machinery. He had some machinery when he bought some land here, and he sold it all. We didn't have a thing, but he had the land, so he had to buy a tractor. He got an old John Deere tractor on lugs. You know what I mean by lug tractor?
Steel wheeled.
Oh, okay.
Steel wheel tractor. And we took it and got it under a tree and overhauled it. And we had bought enough machinery. We plowed with it that year, and bought us a drill. Well, that was kind of the way I was when we started. And when I was about 9, he still had his combine and stuff before he sold out. He combined his own wheat, and of course, I'd drive his tractor. And he
Was
had a
it pull-
good tractor at that time
pull-
because it had
pull
rubber on
combine.
it. And I'd pull the combine with that tractor. Well, we'd go around the field. And of course, when we went north, the wind was blowing right on me, you know. I wasn't very big, but we'd get around. He had to dump his wheat on the wheat field because there weren't any trucks in. You had to wait for trucks to come and get it. And he'd dump that wheat. And I'd run around on the wheat pile. I'd go to sleep. And he'd let me sleep a little bit. Then he'd holler at me and we'd get back on the tractor and we'd go another round. Well, that was the way we kind of started. Now, today, we don't plow our ground at all. We use chemicals to burn the weeds down. And after harvest, we go in and burn it down to keep the weeds controlled. And that builds up the humus in the soil and controls the weeds. And at the same time, it causes the soil to have more moisture in it. And today we have we have hay, not as much as we used to have because we don't have the dairy anymore. But we grow mostly wheat. We grow a little bit of Milo, and we grow a little bit of canola. Then we run our wheat, our cattle. We've got about 200 head of cattle, which is, we're trying to get Bill up because he had all of my pasture with his dairy cattle. Well, he's getting rid of his dairy cattle, and as he is, we're multiplying our beef herd, and we're going back into the beef business. But it's much different today. He can go over probably, used to be able to go over about 35 or 40 acres a day with a tractor and a little plow. Today he's got a bigger tractor. It's almost new, and he's got a 60-foot sprayer boom, and he can go over 200 to 300 acres a day with that sprayer. So it makes it much more easier to farm. It's still difficult because you got to keep water to the sprayer, and you've got to keep spraying, and the wind slows you down. But we have our own combine, and we cut our seed wheat with our combine and hire a custom combiner to cut about 800 or 900 acres for us. And
that was the hardest thing in the world, to get this old German farmer to decide that you shouldn't plow that. But no, the boys had to talk a long time to get Dad to try going into no-till. But our machinery was all worn out, and it was we was going to have to purchase new machinery, the disc and the hair and everything all. So they said, Dad, instead of going and buying all that, let's try no-till. And we found out we could get some cost share if we go no-till by the conservation. So that we did decide to go no-till, and now Dad is a firm believer.
Before you made the decision, did you talk to other farmers who went no-till?
Oh yes.
And you got some opinions? I mean, who would you go to for? Would you just go to people around here, or how do you find?
I attended several of OSU's no-till
conferences
seminars. And I have a neighbor down south of me here that has no-till for about 15 years, and I kind of listened to their advice. And we were a little bit discouraged at first, but now our production is just about as good as anybody's around here.
It takes about 5 years to get your land switched over,
It's so much easier, and we can see where the benefit to the land, in that the soil is kind of healing itself.
Where there was holes, been washed up. Now it's healing itself. It's
the residue is always there. You can see the residue. You have a little more trouble with insects, probably, but we keep them sprayed. We've got our sprayer, and we think it's all right. We're pleased with it. We have a new drill. We have it's a 40-foot no-till drill, and we're just going to start with it this year.
It's going to be another new experience.
Yeah. It's big. Well, you can see it right out here, I think, if you want to.
Yeah, it's been pulled up here. They're going to. We haven't even learned how to use it yet, and they're supposed to come tomorrow.
Well, we have to
Well, to
because
calibrate. Well, I mean to calibrate it. You know,
Yeah.
help get it started so that.
we had a smaller version of it,
Yeah.
and we got a little bigger with it.
Going no-till, does it save on your labor?
Yes, quite a bit.
Well, and it saves a lot of machinery.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have so many big tractors to take care of, and the fuel bill is really something that we were looking at too,
Mm-hmm.
because we use a smaller tractor to cover the same ground that the other farmers around here use their big tractors on.
And we only have to go over the land about 2 to 3 times before we're ready to plant again.
Yeah.
So, whereas they'll go over it and over it and over it and over it, you know, when you're conventional, to keep the weeds down.
But we try to keep good seed wheat, and we keep it clean, and we try to do some of the things that are necessary to keep us going. But
So these days, what time do you get up in the morning?
Anymore I get up about 7.
Yeah, but I'm up at 6.
and 8.
I still wake up at 6 o'clock. I can't stay in bed any longer at 6 o'clock, and I'm up.
So is farming very much a family affair, or do you have to hire outside help?
Just for combining mainly, and for things like seed cleaning, where we don't have the equipment.
Both boys are in the farm
Yeah.
with us. Our oldest son is full-time farmer, and our youngest son is he has an outside job right now. He's executive secretary of soil conservation districts, but you can see the love of the soil no matter what. And he's part-time farm.
And how many acres are y'all working?
We have about 22 or 300 acres.
Come a long way from the original claim.
Oh, yeah.
160.
160 to start with.
Yeah, we feel very fortunate that we've been able to do this. We've raised 3 kids here. We have 9 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. So, they're all right on the farm and farm tied. Just like our oldest grandson, when he went over to OSU, he said, "I'm not going to be in farm. No way." He didn't start in School of Agriculture. He was going to be a scientist. But the 3rd calculus, I think it was, or trigonometry one, it pretty near 80s lunch, and he went back into the agriculture. He got his degree in horticulture. So he's back in the soil no matter what.
Have you had an impact with the drought?
Oh, yes.
We're hauling water.
We haul water now. Our ponds are all dry.
Mm-hmm.
Our wheat crop was pretty good this year. We don't raise corn in here, so corn or soybeans haven't been a problem.
Or Milo doesn't look too good.
Yeah, the Milo doesn't look real good. Any summer crop has been a real problem for us. But the main thing we need is just to refill our ponds and to moisture to get our wheat up.
We've got moisture, but not,
Yeah.
but right now in that no-till, you'd be surprised how much moisture. Steve brought, when he was getting soil samples this fall to know what he needed to put on the land and all, he brought a shovel full of dirt in and said, "I want you to just look at the worms and stuff in this, Dad." And it was quite amazing to see how the worms in that soil, really, the humus is really building up in it.
But you can go out here on my neighbors where they put on this liquid gas, anhydrous ammonia, and they kill all of their insects in their soil.
Humus.
And it breaks down the humus a bit. Plus the fact that it adds salt to the soil. And I used anhydrous for a long time. And I found out that you'd be better off if you could use more natural fertilizer and get away from it some. But I don't fault these farmers. They've farmed like this for years, and they'll probably go ahead and still farm like that. But I can go out here. I was cutting hay last summer after a big rainstorm, and I was going down the road, and I looked across the field, and the dust was just terrible. The ground was blowing so bad, but we weren't blowing. We were catching their dirt. What we were doing.
Well, back in the day, did you have any grasshopper stories?
Oh, the grasshoppers are still bad.
Okay.
We've had them this year real
Yeah.
bad.
They've killed trees for us. We planted some plum thickets, and those little old plum thickets, the plants are about that high. You stick them in the ground, they form a little leaf on the side. Well, they were doing pretty good till the grasshoppers got in there, and
I don't know if they've killed them or if they'll
they
come
just
back
ate
next
the
spring
leaves
or what.
clear off of them.
What did we plant? 4,000?
Yeah, something like that.
Why did you plant? What was the purpose of those?
It's
was-
soil conservation to hold the land.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
for deer, help the deer
Uh-huh.
population, which I'm not happy about, but
Uh-huh.
we had to do that.
Uh-huh.
We didn't used to have any deer in here,
Uh-huh.
and today
Yeah, get me another.
you can go out here of a morning and you can count a herd of maybe 15 or 20 in a bunch. Well, that's destructive to your crops too, and they just keep multiplying and multiplying till they're getting to be a real problem. And then if you don't hit one during the wintertime, you're lucky because you take a chance when you go out on the road after night. And you do too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what are some other conservation efforts that you've employed through the years on the
Well,
farm?
we've used terracing. We used crop rotation. We still do. There's a problem with rye in our wheat in a lot of places. And you can't destroy it just by working your soil. It'll come back. So what we're doing, we're rotating with canola. And the canola is a Roundup Ready crop. Which Roundup Ready means that you can put chemicals on it, and you can kill this rye with this Roundup Ready canola. And then in the spring, after you get your canola off, why the ground is pretty well free if you're lucky and get all your rye out of it. But the canola shades the ground, so it does kind of kill the rye out. Plus, you spray it to get rid of the rye too. And so you come out, and the canola has a big taproot on it, and it breaks up the soil pan. We've noticed that in the next year, if you rotate back to wheat, that your wheat is much better. So we do use this in the rotation. We've tried to use soybeans, but soybeans just don't grow in Oklahoma very good, our part of the state. We don't have any water to irrigate with, so all of our land is dry land, and we built several ponds to help our cattle, but you can build them, and if there's not any rain, you're not going to have any water anyhow. Next year they may be overflowing.
Yeah, Bill and I have put a lot of our land back to grass too. I don't know if you said that, I may have missed it. I can get it moved, but and we've been running cattle more or less on a lot of our land. We put back to grass, and so
With Clay on the Soil Conservation District, or on the being with the Conservation District, he pretty well tells us what he wants us to do. And some of it's good, some of it I don't really follow. But we have made changes that way. So we take his advice on some things, and then on other things we generally go to our seed dealer or the grain dealer that supplies our fertilizer and seed and so forth.
we've always worked with the county agent though.
But yeah, we're good friends with the county agent.
And our kids all grew up in 4-H and FFA, so we've had close ties with the county agent.
We respect the county agent that we have right now, and the former county agent works with the
Seed company.
grain dealer,
So,
that supplies her seed. So he advises us on how to our crops are doing and things like that. So we do use them quite a bit.
Are you using a genetically modified seed?
Yes, we use like I say, this canola that we use now. Wheat has never been changed in GM, but they're working on it. And if they produce it and we can use it, but we very much would
You're
like
open
that.
to it.
Yeah, we'd like to see it.
Going back to maybe your parents, your mother or your grandmothers, were they involved with homemaker clubs?
not so much. Now, my grandmother Chris probably was. I don't know. I was a member of a homemaker club for a while. I got so darn busy, and my kids started, really being involved in stuff. I didn't have time for it.
Mm-hmm.
But our kids showed cattle. Of course, they had purebred dairy cattle. They went to dairy shows, and Mom went along, and I cleaned the stalls and carried out the dirty clothes. But
Our daughter-in-law was in the home ec, or in
yeah, our oldest daughter-in-law was
Uh-huh.
in the. She's quite a seamstress. She did a lot of work, and she's getting back in the swing again. She has her 2 grandbabies, so she's starting to get back into it again now that they're no longer milking.
Has record keeping changed from your father's time to today?
It has, but he won't do it.
How did your father keep records?
he
No
kept
work
them in a checkbook.
in a little note in his pocket.
Then he kept all his bills. I keep my bills, and I keep the income in my checkbook today too. So I really, there hasn't been a lot of change.
He goes in on the computer of a morning and reads a newspaper and sees who died if his name's not on it. But he hasn't gone to put his records on computer yet.
We do use a certified public accountant to do our taxes, but we've done that for years.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in college, I used to do my taxes. I didn't have much then, but a few years ago we got audited, and I was doing my own taxes at the time, and I had made a small mistake in the way that I did my depreciation. I think it was $111 difference. They said, we wish we hadn't come out, but I was real fortunate. And after that, I went to someone that I knew that knew more than I did. And he saved me a lot of money too. And last year we had a oil company come here. Chesapeake has been leasing all of Kingfisher County practically. And so they leased enough land from us last year that I had quite a bit of income. And last year was the one year that you could take 100% depreciation on new farm machines.
So
I bought
drill?
I bought this new drill. I bought a new swather. I bought a new
baler.
No, yeah, I bought a new baler, and I bought a new nurse tank for a sprayer. And when I came out, I didn't know
We were pretty
very
lucky.
much taxes. But I don't have any depreciation left either, so I don't know.
What we're going to do this year.
Did even your father, your grandfather's time see drilling on the land?
His father. Yeah, they drilled on his land. And he was so proud of the first Ernie well. His name was Ernest. The first Ernie well he got. And it was a pretty good well at the time.
We see that, especially for back then. I mean, it was tough making a living farming, that it made a difference. Could you tell that it made a difference?
Oh, yeah.
Well, it helped him, yes. Mm-hmm. And it has helped us. Mm-hmm. We haven't had any big wells or anything.
We don't own all the royalty under all our land. But what we do own, we've got a little bit of oil, gas mainly. Mm-hmm. But it's got so that you can't depend on it. You never know from month to month what you're going to have.
Right. The market fluctuates and.
Well,
the
gas
land
is so
and-
cheap.
Mhm.
And I
That's
can't
most of it.
understand why we can't go to compressed natural gas. Because it's so much cheaper than gasoline. It's just about half, the price. Of course, it costs more to buy those type of vehicles. But they're still talking that these big freight lines are going to take compressed natural gas, but they get
Maybe that'll be a boom for us.
money to change their engines. But there's a lot of them going to do it, I think. And in the future, Mr. Pickett says they're going to be all natural gas.
We're driving one. So
Are you
Oh,
really?
you are?
It's a dual.
it's a deal.
Yeah. So it's half and half.
Do you have any trouble finding your station?
Well, it's a university vehicle, so there's a
Oh,
station.
okay. Yeah.
Not near campus. It's kind of on the outskirts of campus. So, but yeah, I think some people would. Like I personally would probably have trouble. I'd probably run out.
That's why
A lot-
it's dual though. Then
Yeah.
A lot of your
I-
drugstores have installed.
Our youngest son and his wife each one have a electric
Mm-hmm.
and gas. They drive. That first time I drove Clay's vehicle scared me to death. When you come up to stop sign, the electric motor kicks in, you think you've died.
Well, we've seen farming change through the years. We've had the Depression. We've had drought. Did you have any issues during the 80s when it was kind of a rough time economically?
Well, we
were dairying and Bill.
We had a cash flow because
You made
at
30.
those times,
You made 30 cents a day one time when
Well,
you figured up, but he wasn't
yeah.
counting us the kids in my labor, so he wasn't making 30 cents a
but
day.
no, the dairy kept us going. Really did.
Well, with the dairy, I mean, you see changes in regulation. Were you under a lot of government regulations with the operation?
Oh, some.
Processors are making the money, and the producers are the one that's footing the bill. If you go to the store today, you'll see that buy milk at $4 a gallon. Well, the producer gets gets maybe $18 on 100 gallon, they get about $2.75 a gallon. Plus, they have to pay the transportation to haul it to the processor. Plus, they also have to pay a fee into it to help keep these processors' regulations going and everything. So it's with the cost of feed, it's almost unbearable today to try to dairy because there's no one making any money in it. Steve thought he could sell these cows, these registered cows that are worth $4,000 or $5,000 a piece. You know what he's getting for those cows? And he's having trouble selling them? About $1,500 a piece. So he's really taking a hurt on those, but he wasn't making any money with the milking. And I don't know what's going to happen to the dairy industry. You're going to see it just be big like the corn feed lot or the cattle feeders.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not going to be good either,
Right.
because they're going to set their own prices later on. You may see milk go to $8, $10 a gallon at the store.
I bought a gallon yesterday. It was over $4 a gallon.
I
Yep.
did too.
Uh-huh.
Sure was.
Did your grandmother or mother have, well, your mother would it, your grandmother have chickens on the farm growing up?
Oh yeah, they all did.
So the question I like to ask, it's something I kind of like to know is, did they have a technique when it came to butchering the chicken? Everybody has a different technique.
Well, I can remember how my mother did it. She would just catch a chicken, put her foot on the head, and pull the head off. Some of them used to ring their
My
head,
mother would ring them.
and then you just put them in boiling hot water and pick the feathers off.
We usually skinned them. 'Cause that took less time.
Yeah.
My mother raised turkeys too, and would sell turkeys, dressed turkeys at Thanksgiving and Christmas time, you know. But those were picked. We had picked those, and she would dress them and sell dressed turkeys.
I was reading in the history of one of my great grandparents that they would go out in the morning. There was plentiful game, and for Thanksgiving they had a turkey they had shot. They didn't raise it; they shot it. But they did have chickens on the side. They had eggs, and they took when they came into Oklahoma, they would milk a cow and put the milk or the cream in a bag and tied on the side of the wagon. And as it shook down the road, they had butter and buttermilk. And so that's the way they had made their butter.
When they were coming to join their husbands after the run. And I know my grandmother was 6 years old when they came in here after the run. And her mother brought her and her older brothers, you know, down in the wagon afterwards. And she's always telling the story about how when they came across Cimarron River, it was up. And, you know, those wagon beds aren't tied down, you know, and it started to float off when they started to cross the river. And then she said she could hold her hands out and feel the grass, you know, along the side of the wagon. And one thing and another like that. It was fun to talk to Grandma about things that had happened, you know.
Well, on the Pope farm, would you ever have family holiday celebrations there?
Oh yeah, that's my grandfather was the oldest of the two sons that came in with their dad.
Come on in, hon.
His place was generally the center for all the family to come in, and they would come in there every Thanksgiving and every Christmas.
Huh?
They celebrated
Just so that they're on the
Christmas
washer
too
or dryer, and I'll put it up.
But Thanksgiving was a big celebration because they've continued it now, and it still stays on. But they had some large families, and they pretty well filled the house up when they came in. And the kids, they'd run them outside, you know, and the parents stay in and visit. The women go in one room and the men in another. And they were generally religious people.
But we were talking, I saw on television this morning where this one woman is advocating, you know, letting children play and unsupervised. And I told Bill, I said, man, we always did that. You know, we would run out of the house, go play, and talk about some of the things we did, you know. And I thought, yeah, we did. Mm-hmm. We played. Kids don't know how to play anymore.
I remember one year I was about 11, and I had a cousin that was about 7. So we were outside over there at my grandfather's place. We went way up north into the creek there, and we got to looking around. We were surveying everything, and we found a nest with a coon in it. Or I mean, not a coon, but a
badger?
No, a minx.
Oh.
We found a minx, and we got that minx and we killed it. We thought we really had something. We did. We skinned it and put it on a frame, and I think we got $14 out of that minx.
That's pretty good money back
that
then.
time, yeah, it was. But kids were just turned loose when they came out to the farm because there really wasn't any place to go much, and they got in trouble too.
You wouldn't get in trouble.
No, I never was in trouble.
Bill was an only child, so you know he wasn't in trouble.
Would you have Christmas celebrations on the farm at all, or would you do more in town?
We used to have them on our farm,
mm-hmm.
but until then, when my grandparents died, while the families went their separate ways, we really got away from a big family reunion, and each individual family pretty well stayed to their own.
Our tradition in our family,
mm-hmm.
and so far, we've had everybody here on Christmas Eve. You can go to your in-laws on Christmas Day, but Christmas Eve is mine. And I don't know how long I'm going to get to do that. It's starting to get farther and farther away. But we're lucky. Our children are all three here in the community. And so far we've been pretty lucky to have the kids all here. We go to church on Christmas Eve. We have Christmas candlelight services at our Methodist church in Loyal, and where the kids all grew up, where we grew up. So we go on Christmas Eve and then come back home for finger food. I don't cook a big meal because we're going to all enjoy it, even me. And then that room is full of kids and wrappings and a lot of noise.
Where are your parents buried?
They're buried
Across the road.
northwest of
No,
here.
your parents are right over here.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, my grandparents are. My parents are buried right across the road up here.
And what's the
Her
name
parents, her dad is buried there too.
what's the name of that cemetery?
This one, Forced Home.
And is there a story behind it? Was it always there, or?
As long as I can remember. But see, my Crist grandparents are out in the new home, east of town.
Okay.
And this isn't too old a cemetery, I don't think. I don't know how it was started. Now, the one that Bill's grandparents are in, and I have great-grandparents in, it's over west. About, what is that, 2 miles?
Yeah, it's about 3 miles, 3.5.
It's 2 miles west and a mile back,
Half north.
a half north.
And what's the name of it?
It's the
Venerable.
Venerable. It was on the Venerable Farm. It's where they started.
Now, the story about that one is that there was a family coming through here, and the mother got sick and died, didn't she? Or the man. Excuse me. And they didn't have any place to bury him. So this venerable family let them bury him on this plot. And from there it became a cemetery. Her great-grandparents, my great-grandparents, and my grandparents are buried there.
I have a great-great-great-grandfather buried there too.
Yeah.
From my mother's side.
Wow.
I mean, our families have been here forever. And like my great-grandfather that's buried over there came in the run, and he was 50-some years old. So, and his son came, which was my great-grandfather. my great-grandfather. Yeah. It's my great-great-grandfather and my great-grandfather were buried there. But it's all four of my grandparents, great-grandparents, and yours too, came from this area. Your mother's people were from down in the Omega community, but actually right in this area is where we
put out the flags on Memorial Day at several cemeteries around here. And they go all the way from the Korean War to, there wasn't any before, Civil War and Spanish-American War, World War I, World War II, Korea,
have we got a
and
Vietnam?
I think there's a Vietnam veteran there. So it's kind of interesting to see.
We put flags in 4 small cemeteries around for the American Legion on Memorial Day. Bill and I have enjoyed that. We've done that for years now. We've kind of got to know the cemeteries a lot better than what we did.
Well, your family's in the area. Y'all are still very close and tied to the land. As you look towards the future, the next 100 years, what do you hope happens to the land?
Well, I would like to see it stay in the family, but being practical, I don't know that it always will, because
You want a glass of water?
yeah, our children are tied to the farm, and a few of our grandchildren, but not all of them.
There's a glass right there.
Several of them. One girl would think she'd like to go on Broadway, which I don't know if she'll do or not. One girl wanted to be a pharmacist. The boys are one of them is in banking, agriculture business. And
Russ
You
Russ may come back to the farm someday.
I doubt
he right now he's working at TLC in the city. He lives in Edmond, and he got, like I said, he has his degree in horticulture, and he may come back. You never know what tomorrow will bring. Who knows what tomorrow will bring? But Bill and I are hoping that it can stay another generation at least in our family. We've tried to get it fixed up so that the boys can continue. They think they would like to.
Mm-hmm. And you're still very active in the farm today.
Well, we're not as active as we used to be, but we try to keep busy most of the time. I take a nap after dinner now. And
He sits down while I clean up the kitchen, and then we go again.
but we work pretty good together, the boys and I. We argue
Sometimes.
once in a while, but interesting story about this picture. It's not about the picture so much, but this post office right here there was a grocery store here, and then there was a cream station over here. Next to the cream,
Later.
Yeah, then next to the cream station, over here was a beer joint and a cafe. This old boy that run this cafe, he had a lot of greyhound dogs. Carried them with him everywhere, and he was a big beer drinker. So he'd throw his beer in the back of his car or pickup, whatever he had, with those dogs, and he liked it hot, so they make any difference. But her cousin, he was my age, and I didn't have a whole lot to do with him then.
Oh no, him.
We bred together all the
They
time.
both grew up in Loyal.
But anyhow,
he was the second.
he
cousin.
this boy decided that those dogs were making too much noise. So he goes around behind this beer joint where the car is parked. He hokey pokeys these dogs. And they come out of that car or that pickup, and they're yelping and they're yelping and they're yelping. Oh, they were made a terrible noise. So this old boy, in there, he said, if I find out who did that, he said, I'm going to shoot the SOBs. Well, he got his gun out, and he found out that it was her cousin Blackie, and he ran him into this feed store, or where the feed was right next door to him. He got him back there in the corner, and that boy just was scared to death, pleading for his life. He never did shoot him, but boy, he threatened to shoot him. I can remember that just as plain.
No wonder you wasn't in with him.
No, I didn't hokey pokey the dogs that day, but anyhow, I was lucky I was on the outside out here somewhere.
Do you think Loyal could hang on?
Oh,
There'll be a village, and homes, but there was a cafe in town that was run for years by a family, and I don't know, Corletha sold it a few years ago, and nobody else could make a go of it. So
there isn't a business on Main Street anymore.
just a post office, and it's only
Yeah.
3 hours a day.
And we have of course, we have our school, and I think our school's that.
Our school is growing like crazy, and I don't really know why, but
We have a big grain elevator, plus we have a filling station at the south end of town. That does pretty good business. That's all that's left.
Well, he has a grill.
Mm-hmm.
Mike has a grill in the filling station, and that's about the only thing there is in town anymore.
And you can't tell if Chesapeake, of course, is in a bad way, but they've got all the leases around in here, and if they should come back in here and drill, horizontal drill, most of these wells are vertical now. If they horizontal drill in here, they could make a big impact on this community.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, you just never know what tomorrow will bring.
Yeah.
You never know. But, stranger things have happened.
That's right. Well, business has picked up for the station down here since they started this pipeline, too.
But Loyal, when there was rumors of a railroad going through here. In fact, you can still see where some of the grade. And so some of the men in the area had put up grade and everything for them, and then they bypassed us and went through Hitchcock. So that's when Loyal started to dwindle at that time and never did recover from that.
Well, you You had some time out of Oklahoma, but you came back to Loyal. Why would you come back to Loyal?
It's
That's my
home.
home. No, I've been in Kansas.
He was teaching, and the school had an opening, and we had where we could rent a quarter of land, come back to the farm, and he could drive to teach, and that's when we came back.
But we've been through blizzard in western Kansas, several of us, and we've been down in
The heat
Georgia.
during the summer.
and there's so much kudzu down there, I don't think I could live down there. And this is about, even though it's dry, I probably wouldn't move out of Oklahoma.
We're plains people. And our family was all here.
Those
That was
Okies-
another thing. Both our families were here, you know. So we just came back and raised our kids here. Our kids are here. So hopefully.
Well, our great-grandparents went through a lot just to establish a place for future generations to live. And I feel that we need to keep that tradition going if we can, especially if we are comfortable with it, you know, and we are.
I would not want to go through what my great-grandmothers went through.
It was a tough time.
I don't know how they did it. I honestly don't know how they did it. It seemed to me like it would be so much worse for a woman than it was for a man. Maybe it wouldn't be, but trying to raise babies with no help, have babies.
No electricity, indoor plumbing.
You had to pump. I've run that pump handle. And
Yeah. And I don't know how much blowing dirt they had in this area then.
when they had the Dust Bowl, it was awful. I was born in 1937. So, but Mom would tell about, she said that it was so hot and they'd hang wet dish towels and sheets up on the windows, you know, to try to keep the dirt off of the babies and out of the house. And
There's a documentary of the Dust Bowl going, it'll be shown when?
It's real soon. Yeah.
That's Clay has charge of that.
well, he's been working with
He's been
it.
helping with it. And he's really enthused about it. He uses that as a talking point with a lot of these farmers around.
Trying to get him to go no-till and one thing, and use conservation practices.
But Stillwater's the only place to go to school. And when you bleed orange and you're a Cowboy fan all the way around, I guess that makes you pretty close to the soil and to the school.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to add that we haven't spoken about today? Anything else you'd like to tell us about your family or your farm life here?
I wouldn't trade it. It was a good place to raise my kids. And my grandkids, and most of them have been raised on the farm. I have a couple in the city. But they're home a lot of the time on the farm too, so I wouldn't change it. Although I'm always telling him, I married a teacher and he brought me back to the farm.
In 1990, we were the Oklahoma Farm Family of the Year. Farm Bureau names a farm family every year.
That was quite a thrill.
Yeah.
Bill's been on the Regents at Redlands, and so I just feel like we've been pretty blessed with some of the things that we have got to do, and some of the things that we've been able to accomplish. Mainly the kids, they're all three pretty successful. Our oldest son is a successful farmer, and our daughter is postmaster and has got her kids pretty well raised. Bryce's 12 yet, but the other two are in college. And our youngest son has two older kids and then two little ones that he's blessed with. And they're just doing pretty good. They're doing pretty good. Pretty good kids.
You've done a good job, and you're still do good stuff with the land.
Well,
Well, we hope it's better
Mm-hmm.
when we leave it than it was when we got it.
Mm-hmm. Any final words, Bill?
well, I hope that Mike Gundy gets that Cowboy team turned around over there.
It's early. It's early. It's early. Well, we really appreciate your time today, and thank you for giving us a little bit of background about the town of Loyal and your families here and the work you're doing on your farm. We really appreciate it.
Well, we were happy to do it.